next presentation up? Oh, right, just straight on. Oh, there we go. God, I didn't expect it to be as big as this. It's all very interesting. I've had some of the most amazing chats around coffee, I think, here in the last, yesterday and today, than I've had really in the last year. So I hope this does things justice. I should have thought longer about exactly who the audience were, but I didn't know quite who it was going to be. Anyhow, cracking on. We're doing a lot in the final third. We're concentrating specifically on the final third. BT, Virgin Media and the rest of it have got the concentrated urban areas, one form or another, are pretty well done. We've learned a lot about the politics of the final third, which is very complicated, but that is for, I think, over coffee. What we've actually done is, as Chris Conda says, we've, I'll modify it slightly, we've gone out and done it. Hat and Salt Ash we did as part of the bid that BT are about to win. We rolled that out with a trial with Virgin Media. Hat's very interesting, I'll come back to that in a moment. We've also got Hartingfordbury and Birch Green in Hertford. Hat is an obviously final third settlement, but Hartingfordbury and Birch Green are not. They're actually final third, but they're between and 8 kilometres away from Market 2 and 3 exchanges. So while it is fairly obvious when we come up to Cumbria and we drive around down the M6 that we're in a rural area, the final third areas are stuck in little pockets all around the place. The study that we did as a result of HAT indicates that we've actually identified between 12 and 18,000 settlements. There are 12,000 settlements between half the size of HAT and twice the size of HAT, representing 11% of the population, and there are 18,000 settlements between half the size of HAT and 4 times the size of HAT, representing 23% of the population. So we've identified where the final third is. And this is not just a Cumbrian problem. When you map these things out, they are very, very evenly distributed across the UK. The reason that Lincolnshire, for instance, has a low population density is not because it has more or less settlements of these size than anywhere else, it's simply because it lacks large towns. So this is not unique to this area. This area happens to have certain challenges because it doesn't have large towns which have attracted alternative infrastructure. So this issue of how you address the final third is one that's spread right the way across the UK, very, very even distribution. So we're actually connecting up, and we've got real customers now. We're also doing a fibre to the premises, a fibre to the home experiment in Broughton in Huntingdon. The other thing you find out is that the numbers of names of things, there are actually 7 Broughtons, and if I sent directions to the wrong person, wrong directions to somebody, they'd end up in the Hebrides rather than in Huntingdon. So we've got pilots running in a number of other areas, and the reason why we're doing this is really to understand in much more detail what the barriers and effects of this actually are, and we're now planning for a million home rollout, subject to the regulatory changes. I've got a shopping list at the end of this. Right, so let's just put the numbers in perspective. If we take the BT 2.5 billion, 66% of the population, there are various numbers on whether 90 is the right number, 90,000 is the right number of cabinets. You then end up with 42,000 and whatever the number is per cabinet. But you end up with a cost per home passed on those figures of something like £154. So total lines, etc., we end up. Now, we're charged £127.61 when we do any subloop for the connections. If we were to be fortunate enough to be able to connect all those customers, we'd have to pay BT £2 million in order to do so. £2 billion in order to do so. So there's something here. First of all, we scope out how much we've got in terms of homes passed. It turns out that we can beat quite a number of those figures on smaller settlements. So in aggregate, we can address a larger proportion, we can address a portion of those for less money than the equivalent BT benchmark. But also, if we were continue to charge the £127.61, we would and get all of those, we'd return to BT £2 billion out of the £2.5 billion it's investing. Ducts. There is plenty of space there. One of the issues that we do need is access to BT ducts and fibre. The areas around Birch Green need rearranging. I can go into the details of that. But because the bits of the BT network at the edge were designed for voice, they're not efficiently deployed for fibre. And so what we need to do is to rearrange some of these things in order to optimise them for broadband. And one of the ways of doing that is to use the infrastructure which is there. I would hesitate that no animals were harmed in the taking of this picture. There was a broken duct around the corner from Birch Green, and as you can see, there's 2 cables in there. I didn't touch any BT property either in taking this picture. A week after we discussed this, the duct was mysteriously fixed. Business rates, great barrier. We pay a lot more rates on the equivalent. We've gone through the legal system. The legal system says there's nothing wrong with the fact that we pay 20 times more tax than BT. But it's Henry VIII's problem. If he hadn't dissolved the monasteries in 1541 and therefore removed the social impact of the almshouses which were run by the church predominantly, then we wouldn't have had the passing of the 1601 Poor Act of Elizabeth, which is the basis for the modern rating system. 1832 was water pipes were first taxed. 1855 was the Electric Telegraph Company first got rated, and the important thing about that is, as everybody knows, is the Electric Telegraph Company is the predecessor of BT. They were nationalised as a result of the 1868 Act. So we're in 2010. Why are we dealing with all of this? I mean, for goodness sake, why are we still stuck back in the Industrial Revolution or Elizabeth? So how do we help Ed fix it? I'm not sure. Here's a riddle. Bill can answer me this. What's the difference between Chippenham and Newquay? Does anybody know the answer? £53.4 million is the difference. And that is because there's going to be NGA rollout in Chippenham, but Newquay comes under the Cornish grant. We're already serving customers in Cornwall without any subsidy. We've got NGA customers in Cornwall. It's possible to do, providing you can get access to the right bits. Here's I won't bore you with this, there'll be copies of slides and the rest of it, but here's all the business about the meat, the backhaul, here's the ranking, what's feasible, what's what, blah, blah, blah. Bottom 2 boxes. To do these things, you have to get access to fibre to the cabinet at reasonable amounts. If it's there already from a third-party supplier, you can do it. If it's not, you have to find other ways of doing it. There are all the solutions. That's BT's solution in the FTTC GEA product. But you'll notice this thing that's labelled direct multiple gig E here. There's a better way of describing that, or a simpler way of describing that, and that's dark fibre. But we're not allowed access to it. And one of the reasons why we were not able to extend the network in Cornwall is because we couldn't do so on an equivalent set of conditions to the ones that BT were able to do, because BT supplies dark fibre to itself under terms and conditions that it won't supply to us. So here it is. Here's the shopping list. All of this stuff is possible. We're doing it. There's no reason why we can't do Cumbria. We're scaling up. There's no difference. HAT we've demonstrated is similar to between 12 and 18,000 settlements around the UK. It's all doable. And here's the shopping list. Equitable access to duct fibre and poles, economic rates, and on that, the Portuguese model rather than the French model is the pricing model we go for. Subloop prices are realistic. £127.61 for a 55-minute work for a BT engineer is a lot. BT supplies backhaul fibre, but the equivalent BT cost is about 26 pence a kilometre according to Ofcom. Rates are applied, oh dear, that again. It's going to be a long shopping list, isn't it? Rates are applied, it's not equitably equally on an equivalent basis to all. Code powers are revised. There is a problem here. We have a code powers license. Sometimes it's very, very difficult to just get get on and do things because local authorities somehow take it upon themselves, some of them. Others are very cooperative. That somehow or other they've got to defend bits of tarmac from the intrusion of diggers and things like that. It doesn't help. Code powers need revising, and Geo in particular has had problems with getting across bridges and bottleneck and things like that. And then the final one is there are a number of low-cost fibre construction techniques, and again we found that councils are not as helpful in that as maybe ought to be. So that's my thing. There's the shopping list. It is all possible, providing we have reasonable cooperation and change in the regulatory environment, which leads us probably nicely on to Mr. Davies.
Well, thank you very much, Aidan.